agenda here. Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call of board members, please.
Fudge.
Here.
Castiglione.
Here.
Fricke.
Here.
Rozicki.
Here.
And Smith.
Present, thank you. Item 1, review and approval of last month's agenda. Anybody here have any conflict of interest, any discussion, any corrections?
Oh, but I don't want to review the last month's agenda.
About the month before.
How about today's?
Oh, excuse me, sorry. Last month's minutes.
That's the next item.
Yeah, I see that, Bob. Anybody have any comments on the agenda? If
No,
not,
sir.
we hear a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, the minutes. Anybody have any comments or corrections on the minutes?
There was a error in the election of officers, and they've got me misidentified as treasurer instead of secretary. So I just need to get that corrected on the minutes.
You don't want both jobs?
Pardon me?
Yes, you don't want both jobs? Got that, Mike?
Yeah.
Anybody else? Motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes with that correction.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, public hearing. Request made by Kathy Boyd, a resident of 1669 Lake Drive, to appeal various decisions by the zoning administrator regarding the enforcement of the township's soil erosion, stormwater, and zoning ordinance. The subject property is located at 1661 Lake Drive with the property number of 05-295-035-00. Kathy? With your permission, Mike and I talked about this and wondered if you'd object if he went over this letter, this memorandum from the attorney. You got a copy of that?
I don't believe I do.
Oh, well, Mike's gonna, if it's okay, Mike's gonna read it. And if you'd like a copy, we have one. And then if you have questions about it, discuss.
Okay,
Okay.
I would like a copy.
Okay.
I have a question. Ms. Boyd, do you have any relationship with former Judge John Forsman?
Who?
Former Judge John Forsman?
I don't believe so.
Okay, he had a clerk that the name was similar.
You got an extra?
So my name?
Yeah, similar. It's not
Oh,
you.
I'm in the medical field.
Okay, you answered my question.
Why don't you take my copy and I'll share with Mike up here. Thank you.
Yeah, I apologize. I thought Karen at least pointed that to her. Karen Lever downstairs. She sent an email to her, and I thought she had pointed out that this was on the K drive. So, or on the not the K drive, but the folder, the website folder. So, it was our intention to make sure she had this before the meeting. So, my apologies for that. So, okay. So, so you want me to read this verbatim, just so you
Yeah,
kind of go over it a little bit?
Sure.
Okay, so just to give you a little quick background, I wrote a staff report basically outlining my response to 3 points she made on her appeal application. One was violations of the stormwater ordinance. One was non-compliance or non-enforcement of, no, it was non-compliance or non-enforcement of the soil erosion ordinance, and also some complaints about non-compliance or non-enforcement of the stormwater ordinance and the zoning ordinance pertaining to fences and walls and riparian buffers, which is section 515 and 535. So we, being Chris Barchef and I, our township manager, we went to our attorney, presented the staff report to them, asked him to provide a legal opinion to make sure we were providing the proper guidance to this board. So that's what this letter is about. So So if you don't mind, I'll start reading this. So this letter is a memorandum to the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals from Ross A. Hammersley, Olson Howard, PC, dated June 18th, regarding the ZB Appeal 2025-01 for Kathy Boyd concerning 1661 Lake Drive. This memorandum supports and supplements the staff report from the zoning administrator, Mr. Mike Green, and the zoning appeal filed by Township resident Ms. Kathy Boyd on May 6th pertaining to the property at 1661 Lake Drive. Background: this appeal follows a previous appeal filed by Ms. Boyd last year pertaining to the same property, and as you may recall, the outcome of the appeal process was the decision made by this body at your September 19th, 2024 meeting to suspend the land use permit issued to the owner of the subject property until certain issues were adequately resolved to the township's satisfaction. And just a side note, those issues are outlined in the staff report, and we can talk about that later. But going on in the letter, as you see in the appeal application document filed by Ms. Boyd, as well as the analysis provided in the staff report's responses to appeal, there are two primary bases to this appeal. Number one is a decision to uphold the soil erosion and sedimentation control permit issued by Grand Traverse County, despite ongoing zoning violations and work performed without a permit on the subject property. Number two, decision to not enforce township ordinances or the ruling of the ZBA from 9/19/24, specifically identifying the following: Ordinance number 49, Stormwater Control Ordinance, and zoning ordinance sections 515, fences and walls, and 535, riparian buffers. It is important at the outset of the analysis of this appeal to review the scope of authority this body is empowered to utilize. Under Michigan's Zoning Enabling Act, specifically Section 603, the Zoning Board of Appeals has the following powers. Number one, the Zoning Board of Appeals shall hear and decide, questions that arise in the administration of the zoning ordinance, including the interpretation of the zoning maps, and may adopt rules to govern its procedures, sitting as the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Zoning Board of Appeals shall also hear and decide on matters referred to the Zoning Board of Appeals or upon which the Zoning Board of Appeals is required to pass under zoning ordinance adopted under this act. It shall hear and decide appeals from and review any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination made by an administrative official or body charged with the enforcement of a zoning ordinance adopted under this act. For special land use and planned unit development decisions, an appeal may be taken to the Zoning Board of Appeals only if provided for in the zoning ordinance. Each of the provisions limit the Zoning Board of Appeals' authority to rule on the implementation of ordinances solely to the township zoning ordinance itself. Other township ordinances regulating the use of property that are not part of the zoning ordinance would therefore be outside of the authority of the ZBA. As referenced above, the first issue Ms. Boyd is appealing relates to the permit obtained by the owner of 1661 Lake Drive pursuant to what was then the Grand Traverse County Soil Erosion and Sedimentation Control Ordinance. As indicated in the zoning administrator's staff report, the township has recently obtained authority over soil erosion and sedimentation control permits within the township's jurisdiction. However, regardless of whether one focuses on the county ordinance under which the permit was issued or the new township ordinance governing the issue generally, neither of those ordinances are the Garfield Township zoning ordinance, nor do they derive their exercise of authority from the zoning ordinance. Furthermore, although Section 19 of the township's new Control of Soil Erosion and Sedimentation Control Ordinance, or Sedimentation Ordinance, ordinance number 78, refers to the township zoning department as the quote municipal enforcement agency, that is not the same as ordinance number 78 being part of the zoning ordinance. Therefore, as to Ms. Boyd's appeal of the decision to uphold the soil erosion permit, this appeal must be denied as the Garfield Township Zoning Board of Appeals does not have jurisdiction or authority over the implementation and or violations of soil erosion and sedimentation control matters within the township. The second part of Ms. Boyd's appeal focuses on the speed of implementation and an argument that the township is not upholding the September 19th, 2024 ZBA ruling in two particular respects. First, failure to comply with the township's stormwater control ordinance, ordinance number 49. And second, failure to comply with sections 515 and 535 of the zoning ordinance. As to the first allegation pertaining to the stormwater control ordinance, this issue suffers the same deficiency as the soil erosion control issue discussed above, namely that the appeal seeks to have the Zoning Board of Appeals exercise authority over the enforcement of the township's stormwater control ordinance. However, enforcement of that ordinance, which is separate and apart from the township zoning ordinance, is designated under section 12 of that ordinance as follows. Any person aggrieved by the action or inaction of the enforcement agent related to this ordinance may appeal to the Grand Traverse County Construction Board of Appeals. I do want to make a correction there. We did amend our ordinance. That's changed to the Garfield Township Building Code Board of Appeals. So same idea, just different citations. So moving on, I'm on page 3. Based on the ordinance at issue, A, being separate from the township zoning ordinance, and B, having a specific provision providing how and where an aggrieved party may seek enforcement of the ordinance, it is clear that the appeal requesting the ZBA to enforce this non-zoning ordinance must also be denied as being outside of the jurisdiction of this body. The final grounds for appeal, as stated in Ms. Boyd's appeal documents, are the allegations referring to, quote, non-compliance with section 515 entitled fences and walls, and 535 entitled riparian buffers of the township zoning ordinance. As referred on the staff report, neither of these sections were included in the September 19th, 2024 ruling issued by the Zoning Board of Appeals. This office supports the interpretation of the zoning administrator with respect to the application of the language of these sections of the zoning ordinance, which do allow for such structures in setback areas, provided they do not exceed certain height limitations as provided. The decision not to include this issue as part of the September 19th, 2024 ruling could theoretically have been appealed at that time, but since it was not, the appeal seeking enforcement of these sections of the zoning ordinance is both inapplicable and untimely. Therefore, as the language of the zoning ordinance, and I think when they're talking about could have been appealed, I think they're talking about appealed to a higher court. ZBA decision's final, but can be appealed to the circuit court. So I believe that's what he's talking about. I couldn't be sure, but it says an appeal is untimely and inapplicable. So and then it says, therefore, as the language of the zoning ordinance allows for the activity observed on the premises, and as these sections of the ordinance were not included in the 2024 ruling, and that the decision was not appealed, this portion of the appeal should be denied. Conclusion: the appeal under consideration seeks to have this body enforce ordinances other than the township zoning ordinance, which is outside of this body's jurisdiction. The appeal also seeks enforcement of sections of the zoning ordinance that are not presently in violation. Therefore, the appeal should be denied. That said, continuing enforcement of all relevant township ordinances remains ongoing as it relates to this particular property, as the township seeks to diligently and reasonably bring this property into compliance. And then they offer a potential motion. A motion is to accept the recommendations of, I move to accept the recommendations as set forth in the zoning administrator staff report and in the memorandum pertaining to this appeal provided by the township's legal counsel, and to therefore deny the appeal from Kathy Boyd of 1669 Lake Drive for the reasons stated in those documents. So, and then it's just asking if you had questions, you can contact him. So that's the end of that letter. I did, no matter, regardless of where you go tonight, I did provide, and I apologize, it's very late. I was trying to respond to a document that was provided to me 8 days ago. So I've spent all day, the last few days, going through and providing a timeline of events and actions that this office has taken in conjunction with our township manager who's here tonight, our township engineer, and our, obviously our township attorney. So I've tried to outline what we're doing and what we're looking to do to enforce this order and bring a timeline in place to.
I have a couple of comments, kind of questions. So if I understand this right, and it's very, very confusing to me, and I think all of us would agree that the first two items really can't be dealt with by us.
Mhm.
And the third one regarding the fence is something that we can deal with, if we follow his recommendation. Is that kind of,
No, there's what they're saying on the fences and walls. They could, the appeal, she had the opportunity to appeal that. She did appeal in September. She asked you to rule in favor of her interpretation of that section.
okay.
And not allowing the walls and fences. But the attorney is saying that the language is very clear that they are allowed. There's no
It's under
building.
4 foot.
Yeah, if as long as it's within the height limits, the 4 foot in the front yard, or the 7 foot max in the rear and the side yard. But otherwise, they're permitted, and they're stated as being permitted in any yard, and as well as in a riparian buffer. So the language of the ordinance clearly states that those can be allowed, those are allowed in those places, so.
Okay. Board members, do you have any questions on Mike's comments?
Sounds to me like the work's already been done for us.
I'm sorry?
Sounds to me like the attorney's already done our work.
Lynn, you look puzzled.
Well, I'm reading the legals, you know, and the way they're interpreting it, and of course, having gone through 3 meetings, we've got a lot of background from you. And I do understand, you know, that there are still some ongoing, which still stay in place, correct? That's what
Right.
the attorney is saying.
Right.
He's just saying that we can't approve both of these 2 that she's bringing to us tonight, but that we do need to still stay on top of the erosion or any of that, correct?
Is it appropriate to comment on your and Chris's meeting with Bill?
That's a good question. I'll defer to Chris on that. Can Chris come up and comment?
Yeah.
I don't want to say more than I'm.
They met with Bill and discussed all of this. Maybe that would, is that appropriate, Chris? Or is that information that's just between you guys?
I can share a little bit of it.
Okay. Would that be helpful, Kathy?
May I say something?
Yes?
My appeal was specifically worded to appeal the decisions made by Mike Green. I did not have a problem with the ruling September 19th, 2024. I'm appealing his decision. I'm appealing his decision to issue a soil and erosion permit under the current zoning ordinance, which is posted on the zoning department's website under zoning ordinance. And I'm appealing his decision to not enforce the ruling. I cited the stormwater ordinance because those were the basis of my appeal in September of 2024. But I'm not appealing that ruling. This is a sidetrack.
Well, again, this gets
Do we
confusing.
want to hear from the attorney?
So can we start over? So first, Grand Traverse County issued a stormwater and soil erosion permit, correct?
They issued a soil erosion permit, so
Okay.
the stormwater permit's issued through us under our own stormwater ordinance. And actually, up to this point, and this has changed too, and I should maybe clarify that we no longer issue a zoning or a land use permit for the stormwater. We issue a separate stormwater permit. And then if the stormwater permit is not appealed or it's upheld, or the engineer is the one who makes the recommendation. If you look in my staff report,
Yes.
I've provided you.
Read Cordy Frazier's.
Yeah, so they've provided all these letters saying, they can be approved subject to certain conditions, or they meet the requirements of the
And
stormwater ordinance.
Is the stormwater ordinance under the zoning?
No, it is not under the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
And that's why our attorney is saying that's not appealable to this board. She can go to the board that governs that. There's, like the stormwater ordinance, the appeals body is the Building Code Board of Appeals. The township has a Building Code Board of Appeals. So if they come back again and we issue a permit, or the stormwater engineer recommends issuance of a stormwater permit, whatever, whoever signs the permit, Ms. Boyd or Mr. Wagner can appeal that to that board, that construction board or Building Code Board of Appeals.
Okay, so
That's-
my understanding, if we approve or deny any appeal, then that could be challenged in a higher court.
Oh, well, absolutely.
And it has no standing from this memo.
Right. Right. The stormwater ordinance and the soil erosion ordinance are not part of the zoning ordinance. Even though I'm the same guy enforcing all three of them, there's still three separate ordinances with three separate appeals processes. You can't commingle them. That's what our attorney is telling you. So anything related to the stormwater ordinance or the soil erosion ordinance, that is not appealable to this body. And the only thing left is section 515 and 535, which was clearly stated in her appeal. There was three specific things in her appeal, and I can read them for you if you haven't had the chance to do so. So number one is appeal decision by Mr. Green to uphold the soil erosion permit at 1661 Lake Drive despite multiple ongoing zoning violations and ongoing work performed without a permit. That's a soil erosion permit, that's a soil erosion ordinance. Number two, appealed decision by Mr. Green to not enforce Garfield Township ordinances, failure to uphold ruling of Garfield Township Zoning Board of Appeals, date September 19th, 2024, and then she references, has hashtags or bullet points in reference to Stormwater Ordinance 49 and also to Ordinance number 515 and 535. So if the first part, not upholding the ruling of the ZBA, is separate, then then I guess that's a whole nother discussion. But I'm not sure what the basis of it. If you want to go back to that and determine whether we're following the ruling, I'd be glad to. We can have that discussion.
Our attorney's reviewed all this stuff. He didn't say anything about it.
No, he didn't. He's telling you there's nothing for you to rule on. That's pretty clear to me.
Yeah. What would you accomplish by, if these were approved in your favor, Kathy? Everything comes to a stop. Is that what you want?
I want Mr. Green to enforce the zoning ordinances at 1661 Lake Drive.
Well, from what I gather, he's trying his hardest to do that, and
He
Mr.
has not
Wagner
tried
just
his-
isn't cooperative.
He's not tried his hardest. Mr. Wagner hasn't paid a single fine in 2 years.
Well, that I don't know, but I'll have to take your word for it.
No,
Have we found
I
him?
submitted an FOIA request for any and all fines paid to the township by Mr. Wagner, and there are none.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to respond. When we
Please.
rate tickets, the fines are paid to the district court, 86th District Court. They don't pay them to us. They pay them to 86th District Court.
Again, a sidetrack. I was not
Okay.
referring to tickets. I was referring to fines.
We have not fined them other than write them tickets. That's our mechanism for fining, so,
The ticket was dismissed by Mr. Green.
right.
Was that
Yeah.
like a negotiation? You do this and we'll do that, or?
No. I think I'd like to explain that. There's
Sure.
an explanation for it.
Absolutely, Mike.
So, and, to start with, if we're going all the way back to beginning time, there's a different approach back then. And I'm not gonna defend every decision I made up to that point, but I've said it
I'll
before.
defend you, and I remember, and I spoke to Chris and Joe the other night, and I said, most of the decisions that you were taken responsibly for were made by others, and you were told to do it that way.
Right.
So,
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
That's exactly what I was gonna try to say, so. But, one thing I do wanna say, and I wanna, the way things were done prior to Chris Barchef and Joe McManus coming on to the board, are different, much different. You know, I did not feel like we had a clear path on how to deal with this until I was able to get with Chris when he started working here, and, you know, we started talking through this. And that's why I gave you the supplemental report, because I wanted to outline what we've been doing, especially since the October or the September meeting. I gave you, this is very lengthy, and I would like the opportunity to go through this.
Sure.
If you'd like to hear it. I don't know if it's gonna help this
It's
board,
necess-
but.
If we arrive at the point where it's necessary, you're more than welcome to.
Okay,
Yeah.
but just to summarize it, it outlines a whole list of actions that we've taken, whether either things that I've done or the engineer's done, or, you know, other people here in the building have done to move this along to, you know, set the stage for, or at least to try to get Mr. Wagner to comply. But not only that, to set the stage or set the groundwork for future civil action, if we have to go that route. Some of the things include, you know, making him pay escrow accounts and get into compliance with our financial responsibility ordinance, which requires an applicant who has an escrow account to keep it at least at zero, if not in the positive. So we've chased him down over that for several months with the help of our land use department assistants. She sent several emails. Then I think I sent a couple emails. I finally threatened to take civil action, and he finally paid it. Before that, I went to Chris. We talked to the attorney. We've had 3 meetings. We've actually met 3 different times.
With Bill?
No, just Chris and I and the attorney. Just trying to figure out what to do, how to work within the appeal, how to further the appeal. We've talked about, and we are actually pursuing putting a timeline of responsibilities and deadlines. So, for instance, you know, one of the first things we would do is require Mr. Wagner to submit the performance bond, the maintenance agreement, the application and plans with all the correct information within so many days. And I think we talked about maybe a couple weeks, 3 weeks, something, a real short length, because he's had all the time in the world to do it. So we would give him a pretty short leash on that. So, and then once we issue the permit, if we can issue the permit, then we make him stage construction. We have him focus on things that are more critical to us first. Because otherwise, you know, my belief is that Mr. Wagner's gonna do things that we don't care about. Like maybe he'll go work around the front of the house when we want him to work on the backside, especially near Miss Boyd's property line, where he has those walls that are, you know, weeping water. There's still water seeping through the boards there. He's got the cedar boards on it, and, you know, it's not running water into the yard anymore, but it's still seeping water. And we had an engineer report on October 31st that outlined that needs to be addressed. So that could be either by lining the back of the wall, which makes sense. You could put some kind of liner around it to, you know, keep the water from running into the boards, which as an investment to that kind of a project, you think you'd want to do it anyways, because, you know, that water running through boards you'd think would degrade the wall over time. So you have to either do that or something to outright divert the water away from the wall, the back of the wall. So we would, you know, we'd propose to put some timelines as far as that goes. You got to construct this, and then you can move on to this, and then everything else you got to do within a year or whatever. But, you know, and that's something we're working with our attorney on. We're working in conjunction with the township engineer to make sure what we put together is reasonable and sound. So, you know, so a lot of stuff has been happening since September 19th.
Kathy, if they came up with a plan of a performance bond, number one, to make sure it got done and in a timely manner, it's your approval to solve the problem, would that, would you be satisfied with that?
I would.
You would? Makes it pretty simple, doesn't it?
It sure does.
That'd sure be nice. How
Mike?
long could it take to get something that you could present to Bill, and then to Kathy, and settle this.
I have a draft I can do within a day or two. I mean, I already have a lot of the outline stuff all together, so. I wanted to do it today, but this took all day, so.
Would it-
Maybe Monday or Tuesday. I mean, we want to get it done. We're really wanting to get this resolved.
Would it be, in order to say, let's put all this on hold until he gets that done, he shows it to you, and you agree or disagree? Would that be okay?
Can I say one thing though?
Yeah, you can say all you want.
I don't know if we can subject him to her approval. I think we have to subject him to the standards of our ordinances,
Right.
so.
Right,
I
obviously.
mean, if she says no, then he can,
Sure.
he can appeal that, and I think we have a
Well,
problem.
I think that's
so.
all she expects is follow the ordinance.
Yeah,
Mr.
exactly.
Green, if you would enforce these ordinances, I would not be here. If you had stepped in 2 years ago and enforced the ordinances, none of this would have happened.
Well, I think he explained part of that. There was a different administration here, and they had a different approach to things.
Okay?
I witnessed some of that, so, not to throw anyone under a bus.
That's fine. I understand.
So can we go that way? Can we say, let's put all this on hold till they try and settle this with agreement from you and Bill?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with tabling this.
That's,
If you don't want to
Kathy,
make
you
a
object?
final
I would like
decision.
to table it and schedule a meeting for next month.
Yeah.
Schedule a meeting for next month to
Again,
discuss.
I ask you, what authority does this board have to uphold the storm erosion permit?
Well, the only,
If
yeah.
they can sort it out and get an agreement on it, it doesn't matter.
But if we table it until next month, we'd come to the same conclusion as the attorney.
The stormwater ordinance is required to issue a land use permit, which is under the zoning board. So
That
the
is-
land-
That is correct.
This is about the land use permit.
In the packet, I don't ever remember reading anything about the land use permit.
Right, yeah, let me explain this here. The land use permit, it's the last permit. It's basically the final approval for a project. So, whether it's a building project or a grading project or walls, grading, whatever, that's the last permit. To issue a land use permit, you have to meet all other agency and ordinance requirements. So that would include the soil erosion permit, which is just a maintenance permit. The soil erosion ordinance just requires you to maintain temporary site controls while a project's under construction. But if there's issues with the soil erosion permit, things that aren't completed, that can hold up the permit or final approval or final closeout of the permit. So, but, we're still dealing with separate ordinances though. So the way this is gonna work this time is Mr. Wagner has to submit the plans and all the performance bonds and guarantees to us. We're gonna sort out everything. We're gonna review the soil erosion ourselves, because we're the authority on that. We're really the authority on the stormwater, but we referred to our engineer. So we send the plans to the township engineer. If they give a letter that says everything meets the requirements of the stormwater ordinance, then someone at the township would issue the stormwater permit.
Okay. Has
Then if that stormwater permit's issued, the soil erosion permit's issued, and everything is in line, really the land use permit's just a formality, because there's no real rules on how much grading you can do. The only thing that's really come up is the fences and walls, but those are permitted, so,
That's not true.
okay, well,
Has the land use permit ever been denied or revoked?
it was revoked by this board. The first land use permit was revoked by this board back in, I think, May of last year. Mr. Wagner came back and he reapplied. He applied for a new permit. We had engineering reviews, and they're in this file here, that supported us in approving that permit. So, and also at the same time, and it's also in this packet, we had sign off from Eagle. I believe the soil erosion, they were in good standing, and I have files to show that. and I forget what other, but we went through and contacted other agencies, make sure we had their approvals before we issued that land use permit. So
Okay, is that second land use permit still applicable, or did you also revoke that?
it was not revoked, it was suspended. So that permit stands,
Okay,
but it's suspended until they do these specific things.
Okay.
Including the performance bond, submitting the maintenance agreement, and some other things that.
Leaky fence included in that?
Well, the stormwater review from last year addresses the leaky fence. So they have to resubmit plans that address the leaky fence. So they do have to do that.
And
If
along
the
with
plans
all this-
don't, then we don't give them a permit.
Along with, are you thinking he can get this done in a month or 2 months, or?
I don't know. I mean, we're gonna work on this. I'm gonna quickly put together that timeline and let the attorney look at it. I'll let him determine. I think we were gonna give him just 3 weeks to submit everything, so.
Well,
That would get us-
Submitting and completion is,
Right.
You could submit it quickly and then
Well-
dilly-dally all summer.
We have to work on
We
that.
don't want that.
No, we'll have to, those are things we need to address, because we are aware that Mr. Wagner can, throw some crap together and send it to us, and then if it doesn't meet our requirements, then we have to give him a deadline to resubmit it, and so we might have to address that. And that's why we're working behind the scenes to try to put something together that's reasonable. Maybe we bring that timeline back to the ZBA. Maybe you guys can review the timeline and see if you agree with it, and maybe give you the opportunity to review it. I don't know if you can do that, but I can check with our attorney, check with Chris, and see if we can do that. That way you can sign off on the timeline, you can add or subtract to it, and we can go from there, so.
I'm gonna open this up to the public. There's someone raising their hand back there. We'll get back to you, Kathy. Excuse
Okay.
me a minute. Anyone in the public have a comment? Come on up front and introduce yourself.
My name's Bob Wagner. Bill's my dad. He can't be here today because of a PPO filed by Kathy, so I'm his voice today.
Okay.
So anyway, if he sealed the trench drain off, the lawn is in place. It's sod. It's in place all the way down to the water. If there's no underground system, this is in compliance.
I don't know if this is of our interest. I think this is stuff that you and your dad need to talk to the soil erosion people about. We don't, this isn't under our jurisdiction.
Right.
Well, there's also other things. If I could play, can I play his words?
Sure.
All right.
My name is Bill Wagner, and I live at 1661 Lake Drive. I am not allowed at this meeting tonight, though I've been advised by others that I actually am, but I don't trust the party that issued the PPO against me to engage in testing the system. So I'm left out here to do to only communicate via a recording or through somebody else's voice. So there is a mountain of things I would like to talk about, but there's one main point that I wanted to get across, and I will attempt to do that best I can with this recording. I started this project to solve a simple problem in the backyard where the terrain was so terrible with as much as a 45-degree pitch that it was almost impossible to safely walk down there without landing on your back or whatever. It was about impossible to get a lawnmower down there and on and on. So I made an effort with Garfield Township to come up with a solution to accommodate this issue. The result of that discussion with Garfield Township early on was to install retaining walls at grade level and cover with lawn or something similar. That is exactly what I proceeded to do. Along the way, the project morphed from one thing to another, where each step of the way, other ideas came up and better ideas, and little things here and there occurred, and eventually I got to where I am today. And the biggest problem I'm being confronted with today is that the wrong issue is being looked at. By that I mean that we are under the guidelines of the Soil and Erosion SC program that Garfield Township took over recently. And the whole intent of that is to prevent runoff from running down the property, eroding the property, causing damage, and allowing sediment or bad things to end up in the lake. That's the main thing. And the second thing is that we don't want to shed any runoff, if possible, onto neighboring properties. So during the process of doing all this stuff, things kept happening that either caused a need for a change or a different direction or whatever. And an example of that is the driveway that was horrible and dysfunctional, and I decided to replace it and correct it. When I purchased the property, the existing driveway pitched about 11 inches from the south border to the north border, which shed all runoff towards the neighbor's property. My solution to that was to basically remove the old driveway, level it out, and direct any runoff from the road straight down the driveway towards my garage. And during that, my cement contractor suggested we put a trench drain in front of the garage to pick off that water, which we did. And by doing that, that directed the water below grade, which meant that it had to at least continue below grade to some point. So I built a system that directs this water all the way down, basically, to the lake underground, below the surface. And that's become the focal point of everything that's been going on here. This underground system that I put together that basically hides all this runoff from the front edge of my garage all the way to the lake. Now, if we go back to think about the intent of the soil and erosion permit, the need to safeguard properties from erosion that could damage the lake and run off to the neighbor's property, I accomplished that completely, or will accomplish it once I'm allowed to complete my project, which has been held up for at least a year for really no reason. The fact is that the underground setup that I built is irrelevant in this discussion because it is not needed. I can close off the trench drain completely, which would stop any runoff from entering into this system that hides the runoff. And by doing that, or when I did that, if I did that, the runoff that comes down the driveway would merely hit my garage, turn around, run down the side of the house, which is all covered in lawn, and that lawn pitches towards my house, so nothing would go towards the neighbor's house, and it would hit the top tier of the 3-tier system that I built, or I'm in the process of building down there. The first tier is all covered with grass. The next tier, before it even hits a tier, has a planted area of hydrangeas in this case, and landscape cloth and stone cover once it's done, where any runoff that came across the surface over that lawn next to the house would land on the same thing on the second tier, planted area, and then all grass, whereupon it would travel to the third tier, which is the lowest tier, over the same situation. It would hit a planter, It would, over the planter, it would hit grass, which is in place already. Then it would hit beach, and then it would hit the lake, Silver Lake. So all of this activity from Lake Drive, at the top of my drive, which is 21 feet above the level of the lake, would run down the drive, run down the grass to the first tier, to the second tier, to the third tier, to the beach, and to the water. That whole area is pitched towards the south, away from the neighbor on the north. None of that water will shed towards the neighboring property, and none of that water would create any kind of erosion. I can't imagine there being an erosion problem ever, to be honest with you. And if there was, it would just simply be a soil erosion violation that would need to be corrected by me. So that's the system above the ground, the system you see, the lawn, the entire way is 100% compliant with the intent of the SESC that Garfield Township is trying to enforce here. So for the past year or year and a half, I've been subjected to pay costs for Garfield Township to have Gordy Fraser review the underground system that is irrelevant and should not even be considered in this thing. I've spent in the neighborhood of $5,000 already just on Gordy Fraser fees that have never resulted in any kind of change to me, in any kind of violation, and in only suggestions of things that they might want to see that I was probably doing already anyway. I just had never been able to get to them because I continue to get stop work orders about every time I turn around. So the point I'm trying to make here is that the underground system is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it failed, because there still is no issue, because what is above ground takes care of the intent of the soil and erosion rules. It's that simple. That is the only thing that should be looked at here. So this molehill of a job that started out is turned into a mountain of a mess because misunderstanding, I think, mainly. So as it stands right now, if I understand things right, as a result of the past decisions of the Board of Appeals and whatever is happening right now, I am being asked to provide a some kind of a maintenance agreement. And also I learned Monday that it suggested that I pay a $10,000 bond to guarantee that if I don't maintain this underground system that they are reviewing, that then they will use that bond money to do it for me. I don't believe any of this is proper. If you go back early into this, in one of the early, maybe the first review of Gordy Fraser, they weren't even sure how to approach this because this is a residential property, and they're being asked, and I'm being asked to perform things that are generally only asked to be done on larger commercial projects. In fact, I don't think there's another residence on this lake that are subjected to the same kinds of things I am subjected to. I'm being basically singled out for reasons that we all understand because of a neighbor. So the question here should only be, does the what's in place on the surface accommodate the needs of the soil and erosion guidelines? And there's no question that it does. It is completely covered with lawn or plantings or whatever, exactly as is desired. And nothing flows over towards the neighbor. It all flows towards the lake. It makes it to the lake with no erosion whatsoever and clean. That's the intent of the ordinance, and it is 100% taken care of once I'm done, once I'm allowed to finish. I could continue on with the hazards and the life safety issues and all the things that have gone on during this, that I have not been able to complete the project and continue to sit still, incomplete, and it looks like an abandoned property back there right now. My only wish is that this appeal is denied, and hopefully, as part of this appeal, maybe you could correct some of the issues that came up in the earlier appeals that were ill-informed, and they are not relevant to the completion of this project.
And I just want to add that you keep testing a system that's not built. It's like checking your shingles, checking your roof for leaks with no shingles on it. The system's not complete yet. And once you complete it, it'll conform. And if it doesn't conform, we fix it, if we're allowed to fix it.
So,
That's what it boils down to.
so I looked through the packet and I saw the plan of the site plan
Yep.
and the sketches. They weren't that clear to me. And I'm an architect, so I look at site plans all day, and I deal with stormwater permits and mainly Peninsula Township, who is more strict than Garfield Township. So a better plan of attack for us or Mike to approve would be helpful.
Okay, but our civil engineer and Garfield Township's civil engineer, it was adequate for them.
Yes, I did read that.
So, I mean, how much more adequate does it have to be?
Well, can I say something here?
Yes,
if
you
you don't
can.
mind. If we're gonna talk about whether our engineering reviews are adequate or correct, that's a whole nother conversation.
That is true.
To second guess their findings, that's a serious issue. I think that goes back to the construction board or the building code board of appeals. If Kathy or Bill doesn't agree with their finding, they can appeal those findings to that board. That they're qualified, and then that appeal can go to circuit court.
Right.
That's the proper way to handle this,
I
because
agree with that.
We're not qualified to argue this
I
point.
understand
Yeah.
that, but, I mean, if your engineers approved the system and gave us pointers on how to correct this or that, and we've done that, or we will do that, but we have to have permits to do that.
Yep.
We can't work without permits.
We understand that.
I mean,
That's
this
what
is
we're
such
trying to
a-
get to.
Right, but it's such a simple, let us finish the project.
Well,
and then
there's a
it'll
whole list of things that went on that caused all this hullabaloo, and let's sort them out and fix it.
be- Right, but if it's gonna get put off another month, then we're into another winter with another unfinished project. I mean, this has to move along so we can.
Believe me, we want it to move along, and
You don't want it more than we do.
I don't know about that. This is the third time we've talked about it.
I know. You
Look
know,
at-
the only thing we wanna do is complete it, then test it, and then if there's problems, tell us to fix it. I mean, it's that simple.
Anything else, Mike?
Yeah, I do. I want to clarify what our conversation, Chris and I, was with the attorney. Just to clarify, he's not supporting any modification or reversal of the order. The September 19th order and all the requirements, our attorney is in full support of that. He's not questioning any of that. He's not questioning the performance bond. He's not questioning the amount. He's not questioning whether we should require a maintenance agreement. None of that is under question. I just want to make sure this board understands that. I mean, they're questioning your right to hear another appeal, but we're still in support of the order. That order stands. We're not asking you to modify it or change it to lessen any requirements at all. That's certainly not the position of the township or its legal counsel. So I understand, once again, if Mr. Wagner doesn't like the terms of that, then they can appeal that they can start with construction board appeals and they can go to circuit court. And they may very well do that we could end up at that point.
Sure.
So, but that's the proper process. We're not trying to undo any of the requirements that this board put in place, so.
Does Mr. Wagner have a clear path on how to get a proper permit to complete the work.
That's what the timeline is gonna do. It's to put deadlines, but it's also to give them that clear path. You gotta, here's what's left to do. You did A and B, you gotta do C, D, E, and F. We want C, D, and F done by this date. C, D, and that's probably the first things are gonna be the permit, application drawings, like I said before, the performance bond submitted, maintenance agreement submitted, by a set date. And, and then once you've done that, once it's approved, then we want this construction done by this date, this part of the construction done by this date. So we're gonna set some very clear terms with some very clear dates, some very specific dates. And I can't speak for Chris or the attorney, but I think it's our intent that if he slips again and he fails to comply with any of those timelines events, that we would reserve the right to take civil action. We would go to circuit court and we would start the process of filing a lawsuit. That's kind of, because that's where we were already going. Way back in April when we first met, we were already dealing with several months of Bill not paying the escrow fees and ignoring our attempts to collect from him.
I sure hope we can avoid all that.
So we
You have
don't want to
anything
go
else?
that route.
No,
Okay, anyone else in the audience have a comment? If not, we'll close the public part of the meeting, back to the board. Anybody have any discussion? How would we go about stating what Kathy and we talked about as far as this timeline, this path?
Mhm.
Would it be a motion? Would it be table this first and then just give her what our plan is?
I'm sorry, are you closing the public part of the hearing, meaning that,
I can't hear you, Kathy.
are you meaning that I don't get to actually come back up and address?
No, I didn't, no, not at all.
Oh, okay,
You're different from the public.
perfect, thank you.
Yes.
Mhm. Well, I guess I'm not sure how to answer your question. I mean, as far as the appeal, there's nothing, at least that's stated in here, that we can act on, at least according to our attorney. But,
Yep.
you know, I do read, if I read the section 453 of the appeals to the zoning board of appeals, it says the zoning board of appeals may reverse or affirm wholly or partly, or may modify a previously granted order, requirement, decision, or determination appealed. So, what that means to me anyways, and I would like to meet with Chris and our attorney before we, go any further. I would like to meet with them to see if we can bring the timeline back to this board. That's what I would
So
propose.
really, I think tonight, correct me if you disagree, we just table this.
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay.
Yes.
Kathy, did you want to say some other things?
So the reason I'm here is because Mr. Wagner had soil and erosion permit that was taken over by the township. Mr. Green issued it on March 11th of 2025. Under the soil and erosion permit, Mr. Wagner continued to bring in fill behind the wall that we discussed at the previous meeting in September of 2024, the wall that is supposed to be reduced in height. So he brought in a dump trailer full of rock and proceeded to fill behind that wall. The issue is that Mr. Wagner did not have a land use permit. The land use permit is authorized by the zoning department. The fill, the dirt, the stone, all of that is under the land use permit. So Mr. Wagner is a known entity at this point. If you tell Mr. Wagner to paint a blue X in the corner, he's going to bring in a bulldozer. So the issue is that this department should be enforcing the work outside of a permit, which is Mr. Wagner does not have a land use permit. And so therefore, the zoning department should be enforcing the civil process for work without permit, meaning fines, timelines. He's been issued violations that say if you don't comply within 5 days, then we're going to do this process, and then Mr. Green hasn't followed up. So the issue is the process isn't being followed because Mr. Wagner does not have a permit, and he continues to work outside of his lack of permit.
Well, I think with Chris here witnessing this and listening to this, and your point being taken by Mike, I think that's gonna change.
I would appreciate that greatly, and I would like assurance that Mr. Green is not, or Mr. Wagner would not be allowed to restart work until he has obtained these permits. Because,
That goes without saying.
right, so the soil and erosion permit, I would still like to appeal. I was unaware until today that I was appealing to the wrong department. So if I need to issue an appeal for the soil and erosion permit to keep this process moving, then I will write an appeal to the building codes. Is that the department?
No, there's no department at the township to appeal. You can go to the state of Michigan and ask the state of Michigan to review my procedures.
This is interesting because the soil and erosion ordinance number 78 says that the enforcement body can revoke the permit. I have it in my presentation.
Right.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. In this outline and in my staff report, I've explained that I have met with the state of Michigan administrator. Matt Anderson's his name. He is the administrator for the state of Michigan. He's part of Eagle. He administers the soil erosion program. He basically oversees our work as an enforcement agency. So if I have a question, I go to him and I ask him, what do I do? And I have done that with this specific property. When I contacted him, and let me see if I can remember the date. We went on the site. June 2nd, 2025. Matt Anderson met with me on the site. He actually met here in this building. We went over this time, or this sequence of events, made him aware of there's ongoing zoning violations, made him aware of the zoning board of appeals order, made him aware of all the issues to date. And also aware of Miss Boyd's complaints and insistence that we revoke a soil erosion permit. So I had him come in here. He went over the project file for the soil erosion permit. We went out to the site and we looked at the soil erosion controls that were on the site, and we determined that what was there was appropriate because the soil erosion permit is not a permit to do construction. It's not authorizing Mr. Wagner to do any work on the site. It's a regulatory permit. He's required to have a soil erosion permit. It's not a permissive permit. It's not a, hey, here's your permit, go ahead and start working on it. That is not what that permit is for. It's a state-required permit, and you are required to maintain that, whether you're doing active construction or not. And that's why the county maintained the permit for the whole time this project has been going. Even when it was not active, even when we had stop orders on the project. They maintained that soil erosion permit. They went out and did inspections. They made sure all the controls were in place, the silt fence, the coconut logs, they call them, those little straw things that are bundled up. And, and they made them do some corrections. I think they issued some violation notices and some corrective orders and made them fix some things. So when we took the permit over, they had been doing that. And we were not told in any way that we should revoke the permit. We were told to keep the permit open so we can go and do inspections. We're actually doing Ms. Boyd a favor by having this permit open because we're able to go to the site legally. This permit is the only avenue for me to legally enter that property and keep an eye on what's going on there. I can't do it under the land use permits suspended. So I can't go walk on his property under that land use permit, because it's suspended. But I can under the soil erosion permit, which is issued, under this soil erosion ordinance and under Part 91 of the state of Michigan. So,
So who would Ms. Boyd appeal to?
I believe, well, she could talk to Mr. Anderson. He can refer it to his bosses. They can look through the files and see if we missed something. If we missed something, I would expect that they would come to us and say, hey, you got to do this or do that. And then we would do that. I work with Chris on this. Matt and I met with Chris after we went out to the site on that day on, was it June 2nd? We had a long meeting. We went upstairs. Chris actually showed Kathy Boyd's draft presentation that she's showing you tonight. So he knows all the issues. He understands the concerns. But he is telling me that we should keep that permit open and just make sure all those controls are maintained. Because at least with that, if he's got his silt fences up and we've issued another corrective order, he was in compliance. He came in and said, well, it looks good because there's all vegetation growing all the way around the retaining walls because the county allowed him to take all the silt fences out. For a long time, when that permit was under the county jurisdiction, there were no silt fences down by the lake or along the side property lines. And I don't know why that was, but I think my guess is that they saw the grass growing, the retaining walls were hold the soil from the site, so they declined to require them to keep those up. So, but nonetheless, when we took over in March, I believe we issued the permit in March, which was a transfer permit. We're basically taking over county permits. That county permit, we took it on as is, but then we have the authority under the ordinance and the act to require them to make modifications, which I did. I went out there. There was some dirt movement on the south side of the property toward the neighbor to the south. So at that point, I went to him. I issued a correction letter, said you got to move. You got to put, well, actually, it was a violation notice, and said you have to put all that fence back because we're concerned about soil erosion, soil runoff.
And he did.
And he did. Now, when the state guy from the state came out, Matt Anderson, he said there's nothing you have to require him to do beyond what's already there. But I would recommend that you have him move that fence further toward the south or to the north property boundary, which is Kathy Boyd's boundary. So I issued a letter on June 12th, and I just emailed it. Well, I emailed it to him because he's not taking mail. Anything I mail, I don't know if he gets it. I've sent certified mail. He doesn't sign it. So I've basically resorted to sending emails to him because I know he gets the emails and he responds in some fashion. So sent the email, I believe it was Tuesday of this week. So that gives him 5 days to correct that. And if he doesn't correct it, then yes, I can go and I can issue citations. And once again, though, I'm going to talk to Chris. I'm going to talk to our attorney. We're going to figure out the best course of action. But revoking the permit is not, at least from our council, is not the proper way to handle this.
Revoking the
Soil erosion permit.
soil erosion
Right.
permit. He does not have a land use permit.
Exactly.
Which he needs to,
Mm-hmm.
again, apply for and get from.
Right.
And
Right.
that's based on your discussions with Chris and the
Mm-hmm.
township attorney.
Right.
I think I would like to just be really clear about what happened. Do you mind if I click through this really quickly?
Not at all.
These are the violations that have been issued to Mr. Wagner, also 2 permit compliance notices. Here's the first one in May of 2023. I'm just going to click through them because I have all of them. Ticket, electrical fail, stop work notice, another ticket, another stop work notice, SESC permit violation notice issued by Mike Green on April 14th of this year. The stop work order that was issued on May 6th of this year for work outside of the land use permit that he doesn't have. Permit compliance notice from last year, 2024. permit compliance notice that Mr. Green was referencing just now, dated June 12th, 2025. This is why we're here, because I'm appealing decisions by Mike Green. This is my actual appeal as written, dated May 6, 2025. This is a letter to Mr. Green stating that I have no objection to Mr. Wagner attending this meeting and I will not impede his right to speak. I sent a similar letter last year. It was received by Mr. Wagner clearly.
Only the judge can approve that.
These are the official meeting minutes from September 19th, 2024, which you have. Part 1, I'm appealing the decision of Mr. Green to uphold the soil and erosion permit.
Which this ZBA board does not have the authority to grant.
Right, except that the ordinance states that somebody does within the
Yes.
township. So somebody within the township has the authority. We just don't know who it is.
Okay. Also talked to Mr. Anderson at the state of Michigan. He said we can create a process for appeals of this ordinance. We can. We do not have to. Otherwise, if there's no appeals process at the township level, the appeals or decisions or whatever disputes have to go to the state of Michigan. They have to go to Eagle, or I shouldn't say have to, but they're the ones that can hear complaints. She can report me for not following the Soil Erosion Act or the state Part 91 and, provide evidence that I'm not doing my job. But other than that, there's no local appeals process. We talked about that. We decided, after talking to Mr. Anderson, not to add that to the zoning, or to the stormwater, or to the soil erosion ordinance. So,
Okay, and who is we? Yourself, Chris?
myself, Chris, and I would say Matt. Well, not, Mr. Anderson didn't decide.
And
He just asked. Now, the board can change that. We can have that discussion. But, they've deferred to us, at least in the past, on how to structure this, but, we felt that we didn't know who we'd want to handle that. If we did have an appeals board, we'd have to determine whether it should be a construction board of appeals, which really is a building code board of appeals. They're not really intended to act on anything other than building code issues, but just like you're here just to deal with zoning ordinance issues. But, if we do add that, we could maybe make the township board the appeals board.
Well, I've been on this board almost 50 years, and this is the first one of these we've ever dealt with. I'm not sure we need to form another anything to deal with this, if it only happens once every 50 years. I would like to, again, go back to let's get this settled with a meeting and be done with it.
Absolutely. I think,
I'm gonna try and table this for you.
I would like to table this under a stop work order for Mr. Wagner. As in, no work continues on the property until.
I think that's already the case. He can't work with the.
Except he has.
Pardon me?
Except that he has.
Then he should, then,
I'm gonna continue this. There's the ordinance. Any modifications of the approved soil and erosion and sedimentation control plans must be submitted and approved by the department. Mr. Green signs these permits. No earth change in connection with any proposed modifications shall be permitted without the approval of the department. If an earth change in connection with any approved modification commences or is completed prior to the approval of the proposed change by the department will issue a notice of violation, and the existing permit for the site may, at the sole discretion of the department, be revoked if it is judged necessary in order to ensure the purpose of this ordinance is achieved. If the permit is revoked, no further work on the site will be allowed until a new permit has been issued by the department and all applicable permit fees paid. This is Garfield Township's zoning ordinance number 78. The site plan at 1661 Lake Drive has undergone 8 revisions since 2023. I appreciated your remarks, Mr. Castiglione. It's been very vague. To this date, there has been no actual surface area calculation for the impervious surface on the property provided accurately by Mr. Wagner and his engineer. They have all been estimations based on a assumed to be 2-scale drawing from Mr. Crane, the engineer. But it takes a tape measure. Additionally, these are the stipulations from the ZBA ruling in September. None of these conditions have been met, to my knowledge, based on FOA request fulfillments, because I asked Mr. Green for updates and I'm not provided with updates. He simply states, we're discussing this with our township attorney. This is the permit. It's signed by Mr. Green. Here's the site plan that was approved in conjunction with the permit. It's from 2023. Notice that the property doesn't look like this anymore. It's not to scale. The property doesn't resemble this plan. Here's site plan number 2, approved by Mr. Green for the permit issued March 11, 2025. Note the date on this site plan, 8/7/2023. There is no depiction of the walls that have been built on the shared property line with my property. A site plan for the 1661 Lake Drive property has been revised again 8 times since August of 2023. Here's the ordinance again. Any modification of said plans or work shall comply with the terms and requirements of this ordinance as well as those of the prior approving agency. This is page 9 of 14 of the ordinance. I already read this to you. Here's the invoice for Mr. Wagner and the multiple attempts made by the zoning department to get him to pay for the work that the engineers already did on the property. Notice the date on this invoice. He finally paid on May 15th. This is after my appeal to the zoning board. Here's an email from Jennifer Graham saying that they haven't spent any additional billable time on this project. This is from February of 2025. Here's one of the site plans and a markup from Gordy Frazier showing that the things depicted on the site plan are not accurate, meaning the drainstone calculation for the modification that was recommended by Gordy Frazier was not built to specs. Remember, he revised the drain and then reburied it before the inspection and submitted photos in lieu of an inspection. This is the review by GFA in October of 2024. The subject area was the rear and south property. They did make some recommendations for corrections of the drain. I already mentioned the impervious surface on the property has not been calculated. Gordy Frazier noted that in their review. Now the plans for the property, the retaining walls are depicted as existing, even though they were built in the last 2 years. The lower drain is still labeled as a vertical culvert, which is the reason that this drain doesn't work, because it's a corrugated pipe. The drain failure area is located in red. The water flow is in blue. This is the location of the drain failure. It's right at the property line. It's uphill. It flows onto my property, downhill. There's a new natural course of the water because of the excavation that Mr. Wagner did. The corrugated pipe is set on the natural slope of the land. The stone is filled in around it. That's the reason it doesn't work. The stone does little to disperse the water, does little to reduce the velocity of the water because it's a pipe. These are the recommendations from Gordy Frazier. Again, Mr. Wagner hasn't made any forward motion. I'm making these changes.
You won't let them.
Well, I'd like to make a comment, and this is really, really confusing in terms of who did what, when, where, and
Right.
whatnot. Mike, have all the permits that are required to be issued?
No, because we haven't We haven't received all the items we
All
need.
right. Let me
No.
just say this. Why wouldn't we, to me, the plan is simple. Get the permits issued, start the work, test the work, and get it approved. Amen. And you're done.
Right, well, that's what the order was trying to do. When, I don't know if you recall, when we came in here in September, we actually, that order that she shows, and I've referenced in my report as well, that order came from recommendations from our township engineer. Because I went to them prior to the last appeals meeting and said, what can we do to make sure that this, if he builds it, that will be protected if something goes wrong, based on something we don't know. I mean,
Well, if
we don't
something-
know, I mean.
No, Mike, if something goes wrong, it's up to the parties
Mhm.
to resolve it between themselves.
Right.
And that could include litigation if they can't, because I'm wondering if we even have standing here
Mhm.
on the issues presented.
Mhm.
So if we don't have any standing, we're talking about nothing.
Mhm. Right. Well, I don't know about that. I don't, that's a good question for our attorney. If you want, if you do table it, I can see if Chris wants to bring the attorney back to the next meeting, and you can ask him those questions. Maybe that would be a good idea. Maybe have the outline in place and have it reviewed by our attorney, but maybe if it's okay with Chris and the board, see if the attorney could come to the next meeting and answer questions and weigh in on your concerns about all of this, but.
Kathy, I'm not trying to cut you off whatsoever, but I think we get your point.
You get my point.
We get your point. We got it a long time ago.
There's a lot of building
Yep.
on this site that has been done without any permits.
We're not qualified to argue a lot of that stuff. It would take an engineer and an attorney. I go back to, let's table this, have this meeting and make a plan. The path forward, the timeline, the performance bond, get her done. How does that take?
Thank you. I think it would make me feel better to have an actual date.
That would be good.
That's what they're gonna try to arrive at.
A good date would be good, but also you need to untie this man's hands, because unless he can get something done
He is
that you can
not,
object to,
he's moving dirt and fill into the site that is not meant to correct anything.
He needs to have the permits.
He needs to
Right,
have a
right, I'm saying
permit.
get the permits.
This department has not required any permits of Bill.
Kathy, where's your proof he's moving dirt into the site?
Is it common to accept comments from the audience when someone is up here?
Not at
Okay. So,
Please, she has the floor. Thank you.
so basically, what I'm gonna argue here is selective enforcement. It's
Which is, ma'am, let me cut you short. Selective enforcement, and I'm an attorney, is legal in Michigan.
selective enforcement meaning that,
Selective, a cop can be, you can have two people driving down the street, both doing 50 miles an hour, both 5 miles over the limit. He picks off one and not the other. That's selective enforcement.
this is a list of all of the land use permits.
And I said
Required.
earlier, we're with Chris and Mike, new administration, we're gonna try and improve upon that and correct it.
I would appreciate that. I just simply would like a date to have a plan. Because to this point, it's just been rolling
I
on
know,
and on and
I
on.
get it. I get
So
it.
if we can
We're
table
gonna get
this
you a date.
until next month,
We
so
don't want a
that-
month, we want a couple weeks.
You
I
got-
would love a couple weeks.
You
That
gotta
sounds
work with
great.
each other to get a plan. And the only way that happens is takes two to tango. You both have to do it. I mean, you got, as much as you might dislike each other or what have you. and I'm
Mr.
just-
Rozecki,
Yes, ma'am.
I have not done anything to Mr. Wagner. Mr. Wagner has directed his water from his property illegally onto my property. That's why I'm here. Am I supposed to just say that it's fine? I don't think that you would say that it was fine.
Ma'am, I'm just suggesting a plan of action,
I would love a plan of action.
We're gonna have one.
but you
Right,
have.
Mike?
Right. I think we could, I think it's reasonable to bring something back for next month's meeting.
Well,
We have a whole month to do that.
If they have something within 2 weeks, it may be unnecessary. They could come to an agreement on this thing and
Right?
everything could be in order and we're done. But we will schedule a meeting.
It's not a
That would be
they,
great.
it's a Mr. Wagner and the township issuing a plan of action and a land use permit, so Mr. Wagner could correct the issues that his construction caused.
The plan of action was established at the last meeting. Mr. Wagner is to submit as-built drawings, which
We're
he
gonna
has
do
not
another one.
done.
Right. Well,
Right. So I would just like for the township to enforce its ordinances. Mike?
We're gonna
Yes.
try for better.
we're meeting with our attorney and we're doing just that. I promise you that.
Got a new sheriff in town.
Okay.
Right.
So we need a motion to table?
Yeah, I think I would, yes.
Someone want a motion that we table this?
Make a motion, we table it for more information.
We support?
Support.
Okay, roll call for the motion.
Fudge.
Yes,
Was that Rozicki that seconded?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Frickie? Castiglione?
Yes.
And Smith?
Yes, motion carries. We're tabled.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any unfinished business?
Nope, none that I have.
Any other business?
No.
Schedule a meeting for Kathy, for Ms.
Yeah.
Boyd for next?
Yeah, for the next
That's
month.
through you?
Yes, I'll set the meeting date.
Okay.
Send the packet, so.
Items for next agenda will be hopefully unnecessary, but any more public comment? All you folks? We'd hear a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
support,
All in favor?
aye.